So this has got to be like one of the nerdiest movies I've ever seen. I mean, this movie had it all. There were like spaceships, different planets, weird characters, pop culture references, little jokes and cameos, and overall just a whole lot of science fiction, action, and superhero fluff. And I fucking loved every minute of it. I'm Jack Fitzpatrick, and this is my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Alright, so let me start off by saying that I was never much of a Star Wars guy, alright? I know that that's sort of irrelevant, but let me get at this. Before The Force Awakens came out and finally seduced me into the world of Star Wars, I fell in love with the first Guardians of the Galaxy. And even back then, due to my lack of much passion for Star Wars, I referred to Guardians as my Star Wars. So it's safe to say that this franchise is kind of close to home for me, and I had some set expectations that it would really have to meet to keep me happy. And boy, did it meet those expectations and even surpass them. Trust me, if you were worried that this film was going to be anything less than fantastic, well,
chill out. Dickwad.
Guardians 2 is just as fun, just as clever, and just as comedic as the first. Scratch that, probably even more comedic this time around. James Gunn obviously has some special touch here, and it's like the Guardians were like invented with him in mind to make a series of movies. He of course brought the familiar quick pace and editing when it needed to sell more of the cartoony and silly moments, but he also presented restraint during those moments which required a little more patience. With those, the film would slow down and take the time to present real emotion. This wasn't just dumb shit like talking raccoons, blowing stuff up, and like the first, it wasn't completely dumbed down, even when a few of the jokes were a little bit childish. Even during those moments, it still felt like it was coming from a genuine place. Gunn manages to make you take the ridiculous seriously. Rocket is of course a complete character in his own right, rather than being a sideshow, and that is actually really cool. But like Rocket, the whole cast is made up of lovable outcasts, and sure, this is nothing new, same went with the original. But there are some new additions to this main group, and we delve a little bit deeper into some of these characters' dark pasts and the stories behind them. It's here where the film wasn't afraid to really take its time to briefly explore it all and portray some of those centric characters as human, even those who aren't technically human. And it's sort of beautiful how the film makes these people who are honestly essentially kind of assholes and weirdos and make them extremely endearing. The fact that these characters are so flawed is something that really makes a franchise like this so memorable. They are the real heart and soul of this film. One complaint that I do have regarding these characters though is that due to the fact that there were so many, at times it felt like some had to be pushed to the side in order to focus on some of the other characters. Some characters such as Drax don't have as much to do as say somebody like Star-Lord, but are more used to tell a joke here and there and participate in the ensemble-based action scenes. But you know what? I kind of think that that's fine because, you know, I feel like from each movie here on, they can probably focus more so on one particular character here and there. Like maybe the next one, the central focus can be on Gamora or Rocket Raccoon. What? I said I'm an idiot. Rocket Raccoon. However, to really back up these characters, I just have to praise the acting for a sec, because man, it was actually pretty damn impressive at some particular points. Chris Pratt proved to be more than just a funny man. Kurt Russell had one of my favorite performances in the entire thing, and some of the acting and the film made me love the villainous side characters such as Yondu and Nebula from the original. They had some redeeming elements to their personalities throughout, and it made me want to know more about them. Actual character development was just about everywhere here, which brings me to another point about this film. Even though the world was at stake yet again in another Marvel movie, somehow Guardians still managed to make this film more personal. This was honestly a real character piece, and the writing behind it was a very strong suit, as it constantly played with the relationships and the dynamics between the different combinations of characters, juggled along with its bombastic story set within such a deep and rich universe. In fact, that is something else that I truly love about this franchise. The world that these films are set in feels so large, endless, and lived in, despite the fact that, you know, we only see like a few planets rather than like 100 or whatever. And speaking of all the planets featured, man, were there some pretty shots in this. Despite its budget and big blockbuster feel that it gave off throughout the entire thing, you could still constantly see some of the more, you know, independent filmmaker type stuff behind it all. The cinematography felt more cared for, especially when you consider that this is technically a superhero movie. Something to really back up these visuals are the vibrant colors. Basically, this film says fuck the dire washed out look, because Guardians is nothing if not vibrant and colorful. It really makes use of its fictional landscapes and creature designs throughout. Speaking of creature designs, we gotta talk Baby Groot. Man, he is adorable. I kind of went into this film a bit worried, like, oh fuck, they're gonna overuse him. Groot's just gonna piss me off in this one. He's gonna be like a minion Groot or something. But no, I was completely wrong on that, because he was used sparingly enough to not be annoying, but he was used enough to have him featured throughout, and pretty much every scene that he was in got a laugh or two. And seriously, it was just out of his freaking cuteness alone. Yeah, so maybe it is immature, but it's funny to see a little tiny cute thing beat up a guy or misunderstand a situation for some reason. It's kind of dumb, but let me have my moment, okay? Also, speaking of Groot though, it did make me wonder how much work Vin Diesel actually has to do to portray this character. And leading on to that, how much he gets paid for it. Because hey, Vin Diesel, I'll take over. Can I play Groot? I could probably do it, or not. Maybe it's real hard, who knows? Something that I would say was a teeny tiny issue is that the film at times could feel like it didn't have much of an aim. And ironically, when you consider who the villain is and what he goes on about for half the film, it's a bit funny that the film at times lacks much purpose. There was quite a bit of filler throughout, but really whenever it would sort of deviate from the main story, it was mainly in order to have a bit of fun, to crack a joke or two, or to just show off some cool shit. And if you ask me, if Guardians of the Galaxy can't do that, then what can? This film was made for that sort of thing, and I was expecting it anyway, so for me, it really wasn't an issue. Though I've read a few complaints based on this being a major problem for some people. Another thing that I'm super interested to hear more opinions on is what people thought of the villain, because in my opinion, he was the best Marvel Cinematic Universe villain that we've seen so far. Just to avoid any spoilers, even though I feel like strong fans probably already know what I'm talking about, I won't name any names and I won't go into too much detail, but what I will say is that this villain was by far my favorite part of the film. The villain in this though felt like he had a reason, a cause, even if it did involve apocalyptic themes and he was, a selfish bastard that you can't really feel any sympathy for, it still felt a lot more personal than we've seen from other villains before. Speaking of the kind of mystery as to who the villain is, another odd thing that I really have to praise about this film is the trailers behind it. I mean, is that allowed? Can I talk about the trailer of a film I'm reviewing and take that into consideration as to how I felt about it? Well, I don't know, but it's my review, shut up, I'm doing it. I appreciate the hell out of the fact that the trailers didn't show too much at all. Most of what I was seeing in the cinema was new and unseen on my part, and I didn't know the entire arc throughout before having seen the damn thing. No, it looks good. So anyway, Guardians 2 was extremely aware of what it wanted to be, and it just set out to be real fun, and it was. It really didn't take itself too seriously, which funnily enough though, actually allowed for some real heartfelt moments later on, which felt more natural rather than being, shoved in. It presented us with some new fun characters and shed a little more light on those we'd already met in the first. Guardians 2 also felt like every nerdy person's dream come true, because really it had it all. Trust me, if you're a Marvel fan, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Or maybe you will be, I don't know you. I would rate Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a 9 out of 10.